to the Runner X podcast, where we talk about all things running. As many runners know, it's 90% mental. So join Coach Valerie and Coach Caroline as we go through the mental side of running. Welcome back to Tough Love Tuesdays. I'm your host, Coach Caroline, and I wanted to talk about something that we are going to be talking about on the Friday podcast. I think it's coming up or it's last week, that Valerie and I were talking about as we were basically batching our podcast. We tend to talk for hours on end about running, so that's what created this podcast. So instead of basically just talking at a coffee shop, we started talking on Zoom calls or in front of a microphone, and then I'd chop it up into different conversations based on different questions, because I found it fascinating, and thankfully you all have found it fascinating too. One of the questions we talked about was this idea of athletes and how athletes train, or you can even call elites. You know, if you go to a run, there's always somebody in the front of the pack, right? It's that person that puts themselves in the front of the pack because they're going for a time goal. They're trying to qualify for something like a Boston. Maybe they're trying to get themselves on some sort of a map. Even if it's a small race, they're trying to hit some sort of a time goal. And it's interesting to me that the vast majority of runners are just standing around in the corrals getting ready to stay, get warm if it's cold. Maybe they're hopping up and down. But you always see those one or two elites or frontline runners that are running. They're basically running the parking lot, or they're doing their skips, or they're doing high knees and butt kicks. That's not something Valerie and I do, but they're doing their drills, right? They're getting themselves warmed up for the race. And we were talking about this idea that as quote unquote general athletes or everyday runners, we kind of think that, well, we can't use up our steps, right? I only have so many steps to run this half marathon, or I have so much energy. I don't want to give up my energy beforehand. And when you think about it like that, it's really defeating, because do you have only so many steps? Are there only so many breaths you can take? And I can't remember who it was a famous author that basically said, I only have so much oxygen or so many breaths I can take, and I don't want to waste it exercising, right? I want to live as long as I can. But I want to get into the thoughts that we have around it. This thought that I'm not an athlete, I'm not an elite runner. Why do we think that way? What makes an athlete an athlete? What makes somebody say, I'm going to warm up before I go run 1,500 steps for 13.1 miles? What is it in their DNA or I don't think it's in their DNA. What is it in their thought process that has them respecting the race that they're about to run, has them respecting their body, to give their body enough time to warm up, to feel the elasticity, to be in a good place? As a runner, we've always joked about the first mile lies to you, right? You go out and it can either be great and it lies to you because it was a great first mile, and then maybe the heat gets to you, or something you ate upsets your stomach. I'm always hoping that you don't have an injury that gets to you. Or you go out feeling lousy. Oh, geez, this is so hard. This, I don't want to do this. Just go out for 10 minutes and call it a day, right? And then you wind up feeling fantastic. Maybe the sun gets covered with a little bit of clouds, so it's just the perfect temperature. Maybe you start really getting into the groove of your run, and what you thought was going to be a bad run becomes a good run. So why wouldn't it make sense that if that first mile is lying to you, that you would get that mile out of the way before you go race? You would do the drills, you would warm your body up and be prepared for what it's about to do, regardless of whether or not you're going to win. Because I think that's what we do. We go, well, I'm not going to win, or this doesn't count for anything, so why should I treat my body that way? And I started realizing that that's going to be what happens if you treat your body not like I'm not going to get into the whole treat your body like a temple, because I eat Cheetos just like anybody else, right? But if you treat your body without respect, it's not going to respect you back. So if you think to yourself, oh, I'm not an athlete, I don't have to, that's crazy talk. I don't have to warm up. I'm just going to go out and do it. Your body's just going to go out and probably get injured. Your body's going to go, well, you didn't prepare me for this 13.1 miles. You haven't, yeah, sure. Maybe you ran 8 or 10 miles last week, but you didn't do anything today. And you actually ate nachos last night, which is really upsetting my gut right now. Why don't we start thinking about our bodies the way we actually want them to react to us? So if the result we want is that our body has a great run, feels fantastic, great cardiovascular, doesn't get injured, enjoys itself, feels strong and challenged and good, then we need to think of ourselves that way and treat it that way. We need to treat it like an athlete does. We need to warm up. We need to fuel it properly. We need to make sure it's hydrated. We need to exercise it, give it strength, give our muscles and our tendons and our bones the reinforcement that it needs. But it all comes back to who you are at the beginning of the race, who you are while you're training for the race. And maybe stop thinking, oh, I'm not an athlete, and say, I am an athlete. I'm an athlete because I'm actually out here about to do a race. And that makes me much more of an athlete than my sister-in-law or my husband that's sitting home on the couch, right? They're not out racing. They're not out putting their body through this. So of course you're more of an athlete. So really embrace that thought of, I'm not just a runner. I'm not special, and realize that you doing what you're doing, regardless of your why, is very special. And it puts a lot of pressure on your body. It does put a lot of cardiovascular, muscle, elasticity, everything. You're working everything when you're running. So give it the respect it deserves by treating your body with that respect and that time of warming up, strength training, exercise, self-care, fueling it, hydrating it. And then when you go to line up, if your friends don't want to warm up, you just take that extra 5 to 10 minutes and you do the runs just alongside. You do the drills that you know your body needs to perform at its optimal space that day. And don't worry about what others think, because at the end of the day, you're an athlete. Talk to you next week, guys.
Thank you for joining us on the RunRx podcast. If you'd like to know more, join us at www.runrx.fit. And if you have additional questions that you'd like answered on the podcast, email us at support@runrx.fit.